Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. As always, this is your host, Stuart Krantz. We do have another amazing guest for you this week. Before I introduce her, please be sure to hit like or subscribe wherever you are finding this podcast. And cost of admission is free as always. So please be sure to share this with somebody, especially if you get any value from today's conversation. And I'm pretty confident you will because today's guest is a total badass, actually. She is somebody who, in the height of the pandemic, left her corporate job and has gone all in on entrepreneurialism, has built her brand, the House of JerMar, which is going to be even bigger and better for the people it is intended to serve. And without further ado, I want to welcome Jeanne Collins on the show. Jeanne, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Stuart, so much for having me. It's so exciting. That's a really high bar as you announced me. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, I just want to give credit where credit's due. And I want to dive right in. A lot of the folks that listen to the show have dreams, have aspirations, probably dealing with some level of fear. And I want to just ask, I mean, you started JerMar Designs, which I know you can talk in a little bit more about how it's transforming it into House of JerMar, but you started it during the pandemic, which was a great time of uncertainty for all of us. You did it while leaving a corporate job that you're very successful at. And oh, by the way, y'all, she's also a single mom. And like all power to the single moms out there. You are some of the most amazing people, but that absolutely brings a certain level of stress and responsibility. So, how did you do it? And what does the audience need to know about like what it takes?
Yeah. Oh, such good questions. So to give a little context to this, right? I appreciate you for saying that I chose to leave my corporate job. I chose to leave corporate America. That part is true. My job, I got fired from. And I proudly say that to people because I was a sales executive and I was in advertising sales for 22 years. And the last 11 years of that, I worked for a public company and managed a fairly large sales team. And I always say my boss was actually Wall Street because I reported to a public company and had the largest
Mm,
sales territory. So my boss was Wall Street, and you're only as good as your last quarter. And I was the only female vice president of sales the entire time I was there. And a lot
wow.
of the time I was there, I was the only female vice president, period, in this organization. And I got fired. I kind of restructured myself out of a job. I kind of saw it coming. There's part of me that thought that's never going to happen, but I knew there was a restructure. I was part of creating the restructure. And in the restructure, my name was still on the org chart, but yet it really wasn't on the org chart. And so I was surprised yet not, because kind of to think that they were going to keep me in that role at my salary was probably not realistic, but I kind of was wanting to be optimistic. And so I got fired in January of 2020, which was the year I was turning 50, and that was right before the lockdown. And some of the things that I think are really important about it, that experience is up until that point, if you asked me what I did, right? What do you do? And my
Mhm.
response to that would be, I'm a single mom and I'm a vice president of sales. And that would be the end of the conversation. Or who are you? Or what are your interests? That would be my answer. I'm a single mom and I'm a vice president of sales, because there wasn't any space in my life for anything else. And
Mm,
working for a public company and working under the environment that I worked in, I worked 24/7. You were always on call. And I spent, half my weekends working. I'd work late at night. I'd be on the phone in the morning, at night. I work for a California company. So, nothing was ever off limits. There were no
yeah.
boundaries. And in sales, there's always a deadline. There's always money that has to be made. And so
Yes.
you never do it all. And I'm also a single mom, with a really large mortgage as well. And so when I got fired, it was this so many emotions around, how dare they do this to me, right? That's, everybody has those emotions when you get fired, even if you are horrible at your job. And I wasn't horrible at my job, but it was, how dare they do this to me? To, oh my goodness, total utter fear of, what am I going to do now? Because I am a single mom and I have this huge mortgage, and the loomingness of COVID. Like, how am I going to find a job? People aren't hiring to, work. And I don't want to go to an office, period. I hadn't worked in an office in 22 years. So I didn't want to go to an office anyway. And how am I going to get another big vice president job? I mean, those aren't everywhere. So there was total fear of, what in the world am I going to do? And then there was also this total stress release from not having the pressure of that. And there was
Yeah.
this, oh, wow, realizing that I was paid really well. And I always used to say I'm paid to manage the stress. But then I realized when the stress went away that that stress was actually killing me. And that
Yeah.
comes at a cost. And it doesn't matter how much money you make, it comes at a cost. To have that level of job and that level of stress was actually physically killing me. And so there was also this other flip side, which was like, huh, I wonder what I could maybe create now. Like maybe if I keep myself in this positive mindset and stay out of the fear and stay into the, oh my goodness, what could I do now? And maybe now's the time that I could create a completely different life for myself. And so I worked really hard. I had a career coach and I read a lot of books, a lot of books,
Mhm.
and I did a lot of work and journaling about not what I wanted the tasks of my job to be, but what I want my life to be like. And that's how I started to craft what I was going to
Yes.
do, was what do I want my life to be like? And that was everything from writing down that I want to be able to take my daughter to school and pick my daughter from school. I want it to be okay if I go, watch her do something in the middle of the day at school. I don't want to travel anymore. I don't want to not be home for my daughter.
Mhm.
And so she was 13. And so I want to work from home. I want to be home. I want to be able to work out every day. I want a boss who's going to respect me in the sense and know that I'm going to get the work done as a mom, but I'm also going to be a mom at the same time. And so through that work, I really decided that I had to find something I was passionate about. And I decided I really needed to try working for myself, even though I felt like I'm not an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Like, what is this? You think you're going to work for yourself? Like, you're used to a very stable paycheck and health insurance, and like, you're used to that. But I decided that maybe it was time for me to really work for myself and to create something for myself. And interior design was, if I had a hobby, it was interior design. I owned a house. I had done a bunch of work in construction and I loved it. And I really felt like, wow, I'm passionate about that. And that I love. And so maybe if I could do that all day, I will. But I didn't have a degree or education in interior design at all. But I
Mhm.
just made the decision that I was going to jump 2 feet into making a completely different path for myself. And that was based on the life that I wanted and the balance that I wanted and the life work balance. I made a very conscious decision after I got fired that I was going to change the narrative for myself. And it wasn't going to be work life balance. It was going to be life work balance. And life came first. And I had to work, no doubt, huge mortgage. I'll be working for another 20 years. But that can't come at the cost of my life because I realized how much of my life I had already sacrificed with that big job. And that big job gave me a lot and a lot of financial security. And I'm so thankful for it. But I couldn't do that anymore. It was time to choose just a different life and a different path. So I did.
Yeah.
So I did.
I love it. And
Yeah,
I acknowledge you for choosing it, and not only that, but choosing yourself and choosing your daughter, quite frankly, because it is pretty backwards how hard I feel like our society grinds. Like we are the grindingest culture out there. I saw something on TikTok the other day. We work something like 110 days more than medieval peasants. And like
crazy.
I don't know if that's true, but point is we work ourselves to the bone to afford a lifestyle, afford some types of comfort, but at the end of the day, it's like we're grinding to live our life 2 days a week, maybe, if we're
Right.
lucky,
Yeah.
and that's just not sustainable for so many of us.
And it's
Uh
not healthy either. I think we live in a society, and I live outside of New York, so it's a very fast-paced environment. And when you get to the level that I was at, if you work less than 60 or 70 hours a week, you are absolutely not doing your job. There's
Correct.
just no way. So, like, you are not doing your job if you're working less than 60 to 70 hours a week. And normally it's closer to about 80. And it's how did that become the norm
Yeah,
for the amount of time that one should spend at work? It's really ludicrous. And I think, we feed on that, and we build into that, and that becomes a problem. And I think sometimes you have to be forced to take that pause, and I was forced to take it because I got
mhm,
fired. And I could have gone and gotten another corporate job. I absolutely could
yeah,
have. There's no reason why I couldn't have. Um, it was really me making the choice at that time that, you know what, if I don't try something different now, when am I going to? There's never going to be a better time. It felt like there never was a good time, but I was like, there never will be a better time than right now for me to
Yeah.
try to do something better. And I also kind of looked at it saying, what's the worst thing that can happen? If I fail, I'll just go back and get another corporate job. Like, I have a really good resume. I'll just go back and get another corporate job. If it turns out I don't like this being an entrepreneur thing, or I don't like this interior design thing, I'll just go back and get another corporate job. But let's give it at least 2 years to try and see how I feel about it and see what happens. And so I did. I gave myself permission to invest in myself, and I was fortunate that I could financially invest in myself and invest in my business without having to go outside to get money. And I gave myself a runway of which to really invest in me and be all in on that. Not I started in the very beginning saying I'm going to do some consulting on the side for, my old type of
Sure.
career industry. And I found my brain couldn't juggle the two different things. And so I finally had to be like, okay, are you doing consulting or are you doing interior design? And you have to choose a path because it was too much. And I was like, okay, if we're doing this design thing, I got to go all in. And I went back to school and I did 2 programs to get 2 certificates in interior design to have the education behind why I knew what I liked in order to be able to build a business and have some credibility. Um, and in some ways, I felt very much like an imposter. I'm like, who am I? I'm 50 years
Hmm.
old.
Hmm.
I'm an advertising sales executive. I specialize in beauty. And now I'm telling people I can become an interior designer in their home. Are you kidding me? But, I really jumped all in. And I just, I'll tell this story because it's an interesting one. People always
Sure.
ask how you get clients. And so in May of 2020, after I'd started my company and I was going to school and I was working on trying to develop my own website, which I knew nothing about how to do, but I was trying to figure it out in Squarespace because, I didn't have any money to hire anybody. So I was trying to figure it out. And I very quickly realized I needed content. And interior design, everything's about pretty. All these websites are pretty. And I can't use stock photos of somebody else's project on my design site. That doesn't really work. So I need to get some content. So I decided I need to get some work. Even though I'm not done with school, I have to see if I can get some projects. So we have a local Facebook moms group in our town, and it has
Hmm.
2,800 women as part of this local moms group. And it's a very, very active moms group. You can get everything from advice on restaurants in Paris to, a plumber recommendation. And the women are very, very active.
Nothing like a Facebook moms group, let me tell you.
Nothing like a Facebook moms group. The good ones are so good. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to post on the moms group and I'm going to post that I will design for free. Now, the salesperson in me is like, you never give something away for free that you want to charge for later. But I decided in this instance, I had to give it away for free. So I would design for free. So my time was free. So however long it took me was free. The designs for the people, that was free. But then if they decided to buy the furniture that I put into the design, they would buy it through me. I would buy it at trade pricing and charge a markup, which is what interior designers do. So I would at least make a little bit of money, but it wasn't really about making the money. It was about needing work and I would design for free in exchange for needing work. And so I post this post out on the moms group and I thought, yeah, maybe I'll hear from like 1 or 2 moms in the next couple of days. In 10 minutes, I had 30 moms respond that they had projects that
Wow.
they wanted help with. 30 of them. So like I'm like setting up Zoom calls and oh my goodness, I need to actually get like a real Zoom account. The free Zoom isn't going to work anymore. It's like, so all of a sudden I started talking to all these moms and I got my big break from one of those moms, and one of those moms happened to have a full living room, and she had a rug that she loved, and she'd bought a sofa, but she hated the sofa, and her husband hated it, and the room was empty, and they lived in this very large, 7,000 square foot home, and they
Wow.
had 3 kids, and the living room was empty, and so I got on the phone with her and her husband, and her husband was very much finance business person, which was fine. I had worked in a business world. That was okay. And they, there was no skin in the game for them. If I designed the room and they didn't like it, didn't matter to him. Like he didn't have to pay for anything till he had to buy something. And he gave me a budget. And so I said, okay. And so off I went and I designed the room remotely. Didn't step into the room. The woman took pictures of it. She mapped it all out for me. And I designed the whole thing remotely. And so in 2 months, I figured out how to design the room. I built a budget. I had my presentation. I was all buttoned up. This was like my first big break. And he wanted the whole room. He wanted it to look like a magazine because they didn't have any artwork on the walls. They didn't have any books, nothing.
Hmm.
No. And he wanted to walk in and have the room be done. So he wanted artwork, coffee table books, everything done. Window treatments done, pillows, everything. And so I designed the whole room and I went and I met them one day in July, very beginning of July, right before July 4th of 2020. And I met them for the first time in person and we sat on the floor in their living room on this rug, very, very distanced, masks. I brought samples of fabric, my presentation, my budget, everything. I was so nervous. This was my first real presentation as a designer. I was so nervous.
Yeah.
And I went through the presentation and at the end I look at him and I said, "So what do you think?" And he goes, "There's just one thing I don't like." "Okay, what's that?" He goes, "I don't like that oil lamp candle that you have on that one table." I was like, "Oh my God, that's it? You just don't like it? Like literally an accessory? You don't like that?" I was like, "No problem. I'll find you another candle. That's okay." He's like, "But everything else I really like." And he bought the whole room as it was, the whole room, no changes, no nothing. Like as it was, he bought the
Wow.
whole room. And then I went on to, then he was like, "So maybe you can help us in the entryway and you can help us in the dining room and you can help us in the family room." And so I went on and did all these other things for them. But when I left that meeting, I'll never forget the day I left because I just thought, wow, I can actually design. I can be good at this. And I just did design a whole room and presented it like a business person. And he was really happy. And so I can do this. And I just thought I just have to keep going and I can just keep doing it. And I did. So that was my big break, which was so exciting. And that couple is so lovely. They now have another child and their home is beautiful. And they were so lovely to work for. I got so fortunate.
Yeah.
That was like almost 4 years ago.
It's such a great story because it you really, I think, illustrate, I think, a lot of the stuff that people allow to stunt their progress or even just not get started altogether. So you talked about the imposter syndrome you felt, you dealt with that, you went and got some schooling, I feel like you just chose to persist. You put yourself out there in the right communities and the right places to be seen and to get that type of maybe pro bono at first, but eventually paying clients. And
Yeah.
you also talked about how it built your confidence because you chose to live 2 feet in. And, that is the title of your book. Is it really as simple as just choosing to jump all in? I'm gonna be all in on this thing, whatever this thing is. No matter what happens, I'm gonna figure out a way. I'm gonna recruit the resources, get the help, whatever I need. Is it as simple as that for people's goals?
Yes and no. I think there's a huge component, the mindset part of it is really important. And I think one thing that is a little bit unique to me that allows me to jump 2 feet in when I make these decisions is I have the ability to quiet my mind and stop the negative chatter. And so
Mm,
I will say we all have this bird that sits here and talks to us all day long. And that bird is actually talking to us negatively if you become aware of it and you listen to your mind. Your mind is talking to you all day long with the, "Well, what if?" And, "Oh, after I do this, I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to do that. And, oh, make sure you do that. So this doesn't happen. And what if they say no? And what if this breaks? And, oh, in my house, it feels a little hot today. Oh, I wonder if the air conditioning's breaking. It must be breaking because it feels hot. I better call," it goes on and on and on. Um, so I think I have a unique ability that over time I have managed to become very aware of that bird. And it's not that the bird doesn't talk to me. He does. He talks all day long, but I'm aware of his negative chatter. And so I'm
yeah,
aware of the fear and the self-doubt talk that is happening within myself. And I will be able to take a pause. And sometimes that's, Mel Robbins count backwards from 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, really slowly to change the way you're thinking. And sometimes that's, you know what, go outside and play with the dogs because when you go play with the dogs, you're very present on playing with the dogs because I have 3 of them. And I'm like all in that zen moment with them and being outside in nature with
mhm,
them or go out and go for a walk. And when I do that, I find I can stop the chatter and I can get my brain to refocus on different things. And so much of it for me is just an awareness that that chatter is happening and then quieting that chatter and then also being able to talk to myself or write down or journal for myself the times that I've taken a risk or been worried or anxious and it did work out okay. And then when I
yeah,
see it on a piece of paper, it's like, okay, so it always kind of works out. Not always the way you think it's going to, but it does work out. And that could be as simple as, oh my goodness, the other day, I had the 10-mile till running out of gas sign on my car. And I was like, ooh, that it could be 10 miles, it could be 1 mile. You never know,
Yeah.
and I managed to make it to the gas station on time and got gas. And it could be as simple as that, as like, oh, that worked out. Last night I was in traffic on the highway and I swear a guy behind me almost hit me going 70 miles an hour. And because we like came to a sudden stop because there was traffic. And I just looked up and thought, okay, that's a moment to remind myself that it actually worked out okay. It might not have worked out okay, but it did work out okay because I was running late to be a speaker at an event. And I was like, if he had hit me, that would have been really a problem, as I'm driving to this event. But things do work out okay. And sometimes when you take a risk and you step outside your comfort zone, things work out okay. And just remembering that. So it takes effort. I'm not gonna
Mhm.
lie, it takes effort, but I think it's making a conscious decision to want to have the mindset to put the effort in because the outcome is worth the effort in.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think maybe just to double down on what you're saying, we're always stacking evidence for ourselves that we actually are capable of and
Yeah.
even deserving of the life
Yeah.
that we want. And
Yeah.
I think that we just spend a lot of time focusing on what we're not good at or all the reasons that we can't be the thing that we want to be. And so I acknowledge you for bringing that to the forefront for the listeners. I'm curious in your journey of starting JerMar Designs and writing your book 2 Feet In, is there anything that continues to like maybe give you that imposter syndrome considering all that you've built in a pretty short amount of time?
Oh, all the time. All the time. Yeah. I mean, because I'm running my own business. And so I'm at this stage in my design business because I'm doing so many other things that I want to be really selective about my clients and my projects. And so if someone reaches out to me about a project that I get really excited about and I feel like it's a really good fit, I always like my brain automatically will be like, but they're gonna look at me and say, I've only been doing this for 4 years, and therefore, they want to go with someone else who has more experience than me. And sometimes people do, and sometimes I do lose projects for that sole reason. And I have to just remind myself that people choose me because they're choosing me as a designer, because of my skill set, but also because of me as a person and what
Yeah.
I bring to that design process. And so if they've chosen to walk away, that's because it's not a good fit. Just like I do choose to say no to projects right now. And I'm fortunate to be able to do that if it doesn't feel like it's energetically going to be a good fit or it won't challenge me from a design perspective. I'm not in the stage where I have to say yes to everything anymore. And so I think having the confidence to say no and trusting that something else will come in its place. Because if you keep saying yes to the wrong things, you're not putting out the signal to the universe that you want something different, first of all, and you're not leaving enough space. And sometimes this space can be really scary as an entrepreneur because you don't know where your next paycheck is coming from. So the space is scary. But I have found that there can be a lot of gratitude in the space because when I have some of that space, I'm able to actually work on a lot more creative things. And then as a result, something else great happens. So I've learned to be slightly thankful and grateful for the space when it happens. Because sometimes it's not there. And sometimes you need the space and the breathing because you're dying and drowning in work
Mhm.
as an entrepreneur and you're doing everything. It's like, we do everything. We do our marketing, we do everything. Um, so imposter syndrome is always there. I think anyone who tells you that it's not, um, it's things like I have no issue getting on stage or speaking or anything like that. And so I'm never nervous about speaking in front of a group, but I would be nervous about reaching out to somebody about trying to secure a speaking engagement that I was really interested in. And I would be fearful that they would say no to me. Doing the actual speaking doesn't bother me, but the reaching out, always makes me really anxious. Like, what if they say no? What if I don't hear from them? And then I have to just
Mhm.
remind myself, if I don't hear from them, that just means that now is not the right time. And as much as I might want to do that or be involved in that event, it just means that now isn't the right time or I'm not the right fit for right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a really good point. I think so often we take the setbacks or even just the disappointments personally as about us. And folks, we are human beings. We are living in a world that is constantly imperfect and constantly in motion. We're going to be disappointed. And it often comes down to our commitment to our visions, to our dreams of what we want to create. And I feel like what I've heard you say, Jeanne, and maybe not just saying it directly, like valuing yourself enough and understanding the value that you individually provide to the people that you want to work with. Like you said it, there are probably in your area thousands of other designers, but you
Yep.
specifically bring something to the table that no one else can because they're not you.
And you have to remember that no matter what you're trying to do, it's very applicable if you're trying to be an entrepreneur. Even if you're trying to build or sell something that someone else does, it doesn't matter. Not everybody is going to do it exactly the way you do it with the same approach that you do because you are uniquely you. And so you do have to build a little bit of self-confidence and a little bit of a backbone to be able to say, I'm me and what I deliver is of value to people. And I was really fortunate the first 2 years of my career. I hired a business coach who specialized in interior design, and she really helped me have the backbone to charge a lot for what I do. I'm not an inexpensive designer, even though I've only been doing this for 4 years. I am far from
Mhm.
cheap, but that's okay because I know that what someone gets in the end is worth what they pay. And there are people who are willing to pay that. So if my initial interaction with someone is, they're sort of taken back by the expense, then I'm like, then I'm not the right person for you. I'm not the right designer. Like I provide a luxury service and I am never going to discount what I do because you have to stand up for yourself and your value and your time and your worth and what you give to someone and the value that you can deliver. And it takes a little bit of practice. And my business coach was always like, you have to be able to say, this is what it costs, pass the salt. And her whole thing was just, it's about you say it like you're asking for the salt to be passed. You don't, it's just like, this is my service. This is what I cost. Pass the salt. And, and in sales, they always say when you're selling stuff, you tell people how much it costs and then you be quiet. And you
Yes.
don't say like, I know that's really expensive, or I know that's a lot, or it's a big investment. Like you tell them and then you be quiet. And so all sales training will tell you, you say what it costs and then you be quiet and let someone react.
Yeah.
And so that's also helped me a lot, remembering some of those basic sales skills as I've paved my way and kind of stood up for myself and for my value. But you have to be okay being turned down too, because you do get that a lot. No matter what you're doing as an entrepreneur, you get that.
Folks, if you're listening to this and if you have any type of entrepreneurial pursuit, whether you're a coach or you have a product or a service that you're looking to launch, I highly recommend you actually practice this in front of the mirror, asking or really just stating your price to be
Yeah.
frank. This admittedly was something that took me a lot of practice and repetitions, especially when I was selling season tickets at Yankee Stadium. Like there were season ticket packages, y'all, that were $80,000 a year for 4 seats right behind the dugout, and
It's crazy,
say
right?
saying that with a straight face when I had never made that much money in my life up to that point, like, that took a lot of practice, and it's a skill, but with the repetition, with the practice, not only will it become easier to say with a straight face, with confidence, but y'all, that's actually how you get that price eventually for your time and your effort and your energy.
Yeah, it is. And as long as you're smart about it and you're not like so out of whack with what your industry is, and there are some industries where there is no benchmark whatsoever, but
Mhm.
another thing I think that's really important is when you're trying to value your service, it's remembering that your approach and what you deliver to someone as an entrepreneur, they're hiring you because you have a skill set they do not, and you have
Yes.
experience that they do not. And you also
Yes.
have to remember, as someone who's providing experience is not just an education.
Mhm.
Experience is what's happened to you in your life and how you've overcome those skills. And I think as a society, we don't value the actual experience part of people's careers enough, but life experience is really what helps you seal the deal. It's not just the education. So it's like you have to factor all of those things in, and your personality and how you approach and can you connect with them. And then you have what you're delivering on the back end as well. And you also have to remember your money situation. So you talk about like selling packages that are
Mhm.
$80,000 to people. You're like, that's more than a year's salary. You have to remember your money situation is not necessarily theirs. So I remember the first
Facts.
time I sold a $25,000 rug to someone, and I was like, I can't, like, I could buy a car and these people are
Yep.
putting it in their living room. Are you kidding me? And they were seriously considering this rug. And I was just like, I can't even wrap my head around the fact that they are seriously buying a rug for $25,000. But I just had to keep reminding myself their money situation isn't my money situation, and they're a
Mhm.
lot older than me, and they, and if I had that kind of money like they do, then maybe I would feel differently about it too. And so it's all relative, and don't let your money hang-ups stop you from asking for your worth. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Here's a question because I'm sure some of the folks listening to this are thinking it. They're probably like, Gene, this is all well and good, but how do I actually get in front of the people that can pay me what I feel I'm worth?
So that's a really good question. I did a lot of work in the beginning of my career on trying to identify who my target audience was, because when I
Mhm.
started, so first off, let me take a step back. So when I decided I wanted to launch a business, the woman who was given to me as part of me getting fired, like part of that exit process, was a company that was going to help me with my resume and things like that. And I actually was given a woman who was doing some consulting for that company, and she had her own business on the side. And so she had started her own business. So she helped me with some of the steps to starting your own business. And the Small Business Association will give you a free business coach. You just apply, and you can get a free business coach. And a lot of them are people who are retired. And I'll never forget the guy who the gentleman who was given to me as part of that process. And he was like, "Okay, so what's your target audience?" And I was like, "I'll design for anyone who has money." And he was like, "No, that's not going to work." I was like, "No, seriously, I will. Anyone who has money, who lives near me, who has money, I'll design for them anything." And he was like, "No." That might sound like a good idea, but no, you have to really think about who your target audience is. And if you feel like that's making your pool of people smaller, it's not. It's allowing you to have your marketing be much more specific and talk to the people and talk to them based on their pain points and how you're going to provide a solution for them. And that was really helpful. And I've gone through a couple different iterations of my business, and my business has evolved and changed. And every time I've had to fine tune that target audience and define that person even more and make that an even more finite definition. And every time, though, the narrative becomes much more specific to that person. And I think that's really important, because if you're trying to provide a service or a product or something and it's just too generic, it might not hit your target audience. So if you want to be
Yes.
talking to a certain person who will buy your products and services, then you have to understand who they are, what their pain points are, where do they shop, how do they live their lives, what country clubs do they belong to, where do they eat, things like that, so that when you are creating your narrative to them, you can sound like you can relate to them, and you also have to understand what their problems might be. And a lot of times, I specialize in helping executives and helping
Yeah.
women executives. And one of their biggest pain points is time, because they
Yes.
don't have a lot of time. They're trying to do everything. They're trying to be a business executive. They're trying to be a mom. They're trying to be a wife or a partner or a something, and also trying to be a woman and a human, and everything that goes with trying to take care of themselves and keep their sanity, in addition to having a big job. And I can relate to that because I was that person. And so I understand, for them, one of their biggest pain points is time. And so one of the things that I give back in my service is they can get their time back because of how I work and my design process and everything like that. So my narrative of when I speak to them is very aligned to one of their biggest pain points, which is time. And so really digging into that and understanding that and trying to hone down your target audience, I think, is really one of the keys to success.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, like it's not the $25,000 rug specifically that we mentioned earlier. It's that you are taking the time, you have the expertise, you are showing them what this can look like done for them. And then for them, it's just a yes, let's do it, because
Right.
their time, their energy is the most valuable part. Really, it's their most valuable resource, and they'd
Right.
rather probably be giving it to their kids or their hobbies if they have time for them, or their
Right.
careers, for
Anything.
sure.
Right. Exactly. They don't have the time and they don't have the vision. And it's also one of the other interesting things that I learned that I like to share with people who are starting out is In the beginning, it's very easy to become very overwhelmed because you'll hear from all sorts of magazines and companies reaching out to you and buy this advertising and advertise digitally here on Google and advertise on Facebook and oh, advertise in this magazine, newspaper, blah, 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 all over the place, right? And when I published my book, it was very similar. I certain opportunities offered to me to invest and be present in different events. And I had to really take a step back and take off my hat of like, oh my goodness, they asked me to be part of this event. That is so exciting. To, oh my goodness, how much is this going to cost me to be part of this event? But also recognizing you want to talk to your target audience when they're in a receptive mindset to receive your message of what you
Hmm.
can give back to them and the value that you're giving back to them. And so if it's not in the right environment for them to be in the mindset for what you can offer, your message probably won't hit. And and so I think as an entrepreneur, when you're starting out, it's very hard to know where you should go and what you should reach out to. So I would encourage people, think about the mindset of the people in the space that they will be in when they will receive your message. And are they going to be receptive to your message in that space? And if not, then find another way.
So what would that look like for somebody doing the work that you do, just as an example?
Yeah, so I mean, like I get, I hear from like, oh, small jet companies advertise in our magazine on a small jet. And I'm like, that's all nice and good, but people are not sitting on a jet. They're traveling on a jet most of the time. They're business executives traveling
Yeah.
on a jet and they're traveling to a meeting. And they are
Hmm.
not sitting there thinking about, I want to design a new house. I want to buy a third home. I don't like the whole first floor of my house and I want to expand it. That's not what they're thinking about when they're on the plane. And by the way, they're not reading the Jet magazine either because I've been on the plane and you never open the Jet magazine
Nope.
ever. Never. You never do. And so it's okay, well, that sounds cool because you're reaching an audience that's really luxury and really premium and spends a lot of money on luxury services. And that's really great. And I like that. That's my target audience, but they're not in the mindset to receive my message.
Hmm.
Same thing happened to me. I was part of we have a really high-end hotel here, and they published something about a project that I did, which was beautiful, and they did a beautiful job with it. But they then later wanted me to advertise in their magazine, and it's a hotel. And they're like, we have all these wonderful guests, and people come here when they're thinking about maybe moving to town, and you should advertise as an interior designer and that you could help them if they buy a house here. And I just really had to take a step back and I had to really think about, yes, this is an upscale clientele because it's a very expensive restaurant and a very expensive hotel. However, most of the people who are coming here to stay are businessmen.
Yep.
So not that they're not my target audience, they are, but they're transient here. They're just like in and out. And have I ever read the magazine in a hotel? No,
No.
I never have. And when I'm in the hotel, my mindset is not about, oh, my house and oh, I want to redo my kitchen. And so I had to politely decline because I just really had to put myself in the mindset of my client and my ideal client and how would they be thinking about my products and services at that time if I were to talk to them in that environment. And so for me, talking to people in an environment that works for them is honestly social media is a really good one for me because they're then in their homes having a couple minutes of like escape time and me showing them some beautiful images about a beautiful house, they're a little more receptive to that. And so, like my Instagram platform gets much more activity at night than it does during the
Sure.
day because my target audience is either working or taking care of children. So they're busy during the day. But at night, like 9 o'clock ish is like the most active time on my Instagram platform. And
Yeah.
so knowing that helps me with the content and what I serve up and trying to talk to them and create a dialogue with them in a way that is at a time that they're going to be receptive to my message.
Yeah. So, so good. Folks, if you're listening to this, just take these words to heart. And if you are pursuing anything entrepreneurially, lean into finding your customers where they are, as Jeanne is saying, at a time that works for them and in a place that works for them, and maybe even structuring your messaging in a way that works for them, whether it be on social media or any other outlets that you find you want to try and give an option to. I know you mentioned you got your start in a mom's group on Facebook. Like whatever that space is, go for it. Like put yourself out there and see what happens. You got nothing to lose. Oh,
Be you. Be you. That's my other one other thing. Be you. Don't try to gauge your success or what you're doing based on other people, and that's hard to do with social media, but be you and come up with your own goals and your own benchmarks for you and use that as your stick of success.
That's probably a whole podcast episode in itself. But
It is.
Jeanne, in the interest of time, I want to make sure that we have the opportunity to talk about House of JerMar and also really what you're creating and how it can continue to serve people.
Oh, thank you. So the House of JerMar is something I'm so passionate about. So I wrote my book to feed in lessons from an all-in life. I got released in July of 2023, so I started writing it the year before. And I wrote it with the purpose and the mission of trying to inspire women to live all in and become designers of their own lives and take risk and overcome fear and just make small steps to make themselves a priority. And I was going to use the lessons from my own life and the things that I had learned and the tools and the tricks and the tips and, use myself as a way to help motivate and inspire people. So that's why I wrote my book. And then after I wrote my book, I started speaking a lot about my book. And so that led down a whole nother road of me being on a lot of podcasts like this one, which I truly love getting to connect with other people and talk about things that I'm really passionate about. And so that led down a road to, okay, how do I take these two businesses, one being interior design, which I have such a passion for, and the other being speaking, writing, reading, podcasting. How do I take those and make them have some synergy? And what is that? And so I did hire a branding company to help me figure it out because I was really struggling with the connection between it. And so I hired a coach and a branding company to help me figure it out. And from that, as a result of that, which was a lot of internal work about, who do I want to be and what do I want to do in 5 years and what makes me happy and what are my passions and all of that internal digging, we came up with the House of JerMar. And so the House of JerMar is where wellness starts within. And so it's a lifestyle brand. It is a lifestyle platform that incorporates inner wellness, which starts within your surroundings. So that is all of my love and passion for interior design and the importance of the energy in your home and designing spaces that actually fuel you instead of create chaos and stress for you. And then also wellness starts within with personal wellness, because I have a very strong passion for making yourself a priority, finding time, meditating, exercising, eating well, taking care of yourself, putting life before work, saying no more often and saying yes more often to the right things and no to the other things you shouldn't be saying that. And so I've combined those two into this wellness platform, which will include my interior design services. It includes my podcast, books, speaking, motivational speaking, probably not coaching, even though I am a certified mindset coach, but I don't really know that I want to be in the coaching business. I'd rather be in the speaking business, to be honest. And really, my mission is to empower 1 million women to live all in. So back to your point about target audience, I had to choose. And so I chose empowering 1 million women to live all in and do it through wellness starting within. And whether that be through interior design or that through personal wellness or nutrition or exercise or mindset or yoga or sound baths or Reiki or whatever it is, that is my mission, is to use this platform to reach 1 million women to live all in and hopefully change some lives, and then hopefully also pay it forward to other women to encourage them to live more all in and become designers of their lives too. So that launches at the end of June. The podcast and the new lifestyle brand website go out at the end of June.
I love it. And absolutely, everybody go check out Jeanne's new platform and the new podcast. And in the interim, want to make sure that folks are able to connect with you specifically and directly. What are the best ways for folks to do that?
The easiest way is honestly through Instagram. So my Instagram handle is at House of JerMar. So it's House of JerMar, JerMar. I'm incredibly active on Instagram. You can DM me, I will respond. And that is really the easiest way to find me. And then the links to my website and my blog and my newsletter and my podcast and my book and all my articles, everything else all lives in that place. So if you wanted to find one destination, that's the best place. And then after the 24th of June, houseofjermar.com, it's all there as well.
And folks, all of that will be made readily available so that you can continue the conversation with Jeanne off of this show, connect with her, learn a bit more about how you can up-level your life and how Jeanne might be the right person to help you do that through the House of JerMar. Jeanne, we are going to have to wind this down. Something that I ask every single guest on this show. What are you acknowledging yourself for today?
Oh, oh, what a good question. Um, I think the thing I'm going to say that I acknowledge for myself today is my strength. And I think sometimes when life is hard, we forget how strong we can be. And lately, I've had a lot going on. My daughter graduated from high school. She moved to New York City. Like, there's just a lot. I'm launching a podcast, launching a new brand, launching a new website, and have clients that I'm really busy with from the design perspective. So it's just a lot. And so just reminding myself that I am really strong and that I can do it. I can do this. I can do this. And not every day will be as chaotic as the last few weeks have been, but that I am really strong and that, you're not given anything you can't handle.
Everything happens for a reason. And Jeanne, I acknowledge you for taking it one step at a time and making it all happen. And I acknowledge you and appreciate your example for the listeners. And I know that you're going to continue to have an amazing impact from here on out.
Thank you, Stuart. And thank you for having me on my show. It truly was a pleasure and an honor. Your show is great. Your subject matter is fantastic. So thank you for trying to help others, succeed in their lives as well. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And folks, as you know, this has been another episode of Your Inside Track to Success. We'll be back next week with another amazing guest or message. Please share this out with somebody if you got any value, which I know you did. We will see you next week.